All right, on this episode of the Utah High School Hoops podcast, I jumped on the Sunday Night Ballers Instagram Live with AJ Jackson, and we talk for a full hour. And at the very end, sadly, Instagram cut us off. So we'll get through the episode, and then if you get all the way to the end, it just cuts off abruptly. That was not our fault. It was Instagram, but we'll know better next time. I hope you really enjoyed this discussion. Let's get to it.
There he is. What's up, Adam?
What's going
How you
on?
doing tonight?
I'm ready for the wrath. I'm fully prepared. Look, I even wore my Jordan last shot in Utah hoodie with a bunch of sad Jazz fans in the background, just to embrace the everybody telling me why I was wrong. Which, by the way, I love that I can come on here and talk about it because I will face it up. I will be man to man. We'll have a good talk about it.
I love it. So if you think that Adam was dead wrong on his top fives, we're going to go through 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A. If you think he was dead wrong, I want to see it in the comments. I don't have a
Can
lot of
I?
opposition, but I do have a little bit for you. Maybe I have some more questions rather than opposition,
Yeah,
right? That works too.
yeah.
I like it. Let's dive into it.
Oh,
Obviously, there's a lot going
looks like
on.
there's a comment. Yeah, he was dead wrong. That was
That was pretty. Yeah, there you go. I saw that.
uh,
Obviously, there was a lot going on this last week. A lot of stuff a lot of stuff happening. A lot of big games. We'll get into some of those, but obviously, you released the 6A, 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A top fives. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but we're going to start covering some 1A hoops here on the show
dude.
and on the scoreboard. Yeah, right.
Let's go.
Um, yeah, and and it was kind of funny how it went down, but we got it taken care of. So let's start out with 6A. Give us your top five in the comments. I want to see if he's crazy or if he's dead on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Start with number one. Let's go. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. So Harriman, I had 1 week where I moved them down, and then Davis, I moved them up and didn't go so hot. So it's like the curse, I think. So I got Harriman 1, Layton 2, Davis 3, and I'm gonna be totally honest. I was going through sitting on my couch watching football, thinking who is 4 and 5, and I started going through all the options. I was like, well, they just lost. Okay, they just had a tough loss. Like I got Bingham at 4, and let me tell you why. I don't know what's going to happen with Luke West. I've heard he might be out for a little bit longer. I don't honestly know,
So I
but
heard he's out for the season.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard similar,
Yeah.
right? But the thing about them is, so they go out and they lose to, is it Mountain Ridge?
hmm
And I thought, okay, well, they're probably going to drop off. And then those dudes rally back together. The Miners rally around their guys, their coach. Parker Snedeker goes to Corner Canyon and gets a 3-point win. And so I was like, I mean, a tough loss, but then a really good win. I was going with Bingham, and then I put Lone Peak at 5. Probably should have been Lehigh, if I'm being totally candid. At 5, but the Lone Peaks had a couple of really, really close. Had a 1-point loss to American Fork. I think they had a 3 or 4-point loss in there as well. They're in every game, and then they trounced. Oh man, I just forgot the name.
Yeah.
Westlake. I was gonna say Westfield, and I was like, it's not that. So then they beat Westlake by 15. Which, by the way, that score took. I'm surprised they even knew what the score was. That thing took forever to come in. And so
How are we supposed
listen,
to run a good scoreboard program if we're sitting there waiting on scores till midnight? I ain't got that kind of
and
time.
it's not Deseret News' problem. It's the home team. You guys, especially if you win. I was like, oh crap, Lone Peak lost because I picked them to win. But I am totally guilty of recency bias, 1,000% on these. But it was like, who then? So is it Lehigh? Is it Weber? Like, who is the
It can't
team that's
be.
like
I love
Corner
Weaver, but it can't be
Canyon?
Weaver. I was thinking
I
the same
know.
thing. It's got to be your 5 team has to be Westlake, Lehigh, or Lone Peak. I'll give you that. It's got to be one of those three.
Well,
It
that's
can't be
that's
Corner
four.
Canyon.
That's 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Like
hmm
it's just you can go through each team's thing and be like, okay, well they had this loss or they're missing this guy. to me, 6A is like Harriman, Layton right now are like 1 and 1A.
Mhm.
And then Davis is very clearly like they're there at 3. They could still jump up because they play again against Layton. I think I don't know when, but
Yep.
they could come back and win. I
Is it
think it's a
this
good
week? It
shooting night,
might be
right?
this week.
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, that was my thought process. Is I was like, well, literally, I was like, I would put Lone Peak in. We kind of share a same name, you know.
Peak.
So I just,
I see you working there.
yeah, I mean, you guys can tell how critical these rankings really are in the grand scheme of it, but the fun to talk about, right? So that's why I put them
So
out there. That was my
February
thinking.
4th. February 4th is Layton at Davis. February 4th, that'll be a good one. It's at Davis. Last game obviously was at Layton. And honestly, I was at that game. They did an excellent job making it difficult for Davis, for Coleman Atwater to get shots. The other guys, as somebody put it to me, the football kids couldn't make shots that night, whatever, right? But if you let Layton play that chaotic style that they like to play in, and they're comfortable in those situations, it's going to be
Yeah,
tough, right? I'm
yeah,
interested to see how this plays out because, I agree with you. There's 3 teams. You got Harriman, you got Davis, you got Layton, and then there's a lot of other teams that are fully capable of knocking any of those top 3 teams out.
yes,
So it's not like it's tier 1, but it's tier 1A, I would say. There's a lot of teams right there that are fully capable, and I think Weaver's. I don't think anybody wants to see a team like Weaver because they can shoot the lights out. Did you see what
right.
Open was doing? My goodness.
Yep.
And so
Well,
it's going to be really
him
interesting.
and Howe and Bingham, like those, the
Yeah.
the boys up there are not they're not going to back down from anybody. And we keep kind of waiting, I think, for the run from American Fork, and it
Is it going to
hasn't
happen?
happened yet. But what if it happens in the state? Like, so, little history on me. So when I was at Colorado State, we were the 8th seed in the Mountain West tournament. We were terrible all year. I mean, I don't want to say terrible. But we were 8 out of 10. We ran the tables in the Mountain West tournament, drew Duke in the first round because 2 kids got really hot and almost clipped Duke. Whoa, sorry for the balloons coming up. I forgot about that little function here. Um, yeah, Lehigh did just beat Lone Peak. That's why I said upon further review, it probably should be Lehigh. It's a great point. So yes, absolutely. Like I said, I didn't put a ton of thought into it. I was hoping for the Eagles to get a victory when I was filling these out. Um, but but the point is, like, would it be shocking if we're like, yeah, American Fork came out and beat Davis in the first round? I think people would be like, yeah, it's a tough loss, but like they got dudes.
American Fork
Similar in 5A
just
with
beat Lehigh a couple weeks ago. So I'm looking at the score, it's
I
53
know,
52.
I
And
know.
then Lehigh loses to Westlake. And then, they win 2 in a row, 3 in a row. And all of a sudden everybody's getting on you for not having them, in your top 5. I would probably, I don't even know. Like, you might just chalk up Westlake's loss as a, hey, it happens,
Yeah,
and keep them at 5, right? I mean,
could
you
could
could have easily have done that as well.
it's the 4-5 is pretty fluid right now in 6A, and you guys you're absolutely right, right? Like I literally when you posted that, I was like, ah, crap, I probably should have put Lehigh there, but they don't have my name. Like, listen, if you want to name your school with my similar last name, then I'm all for it. Like Adams State, the Grizzlies, go Grizzlies in
Yeah,
college
there
in
you
the
go.
RMAC. Anyway, so that's my 6A. Um, I gotta pull them all up here.
I like it.
So that's who I had in 6A.
Pull up your 5A real quick while I read this. So obviously Noah Bendinger's leading 6A in scoring at 23 points a game. Atwater's having a phenomenal season, 21 points a game there. Isaiah Reiser, 20 points a game. Mulford, 19 points a game. Easton Hawkins, 19. And again, Bryce Mella coming off of sitting out. He's right there as well. Barclay's up there at 17 points a game. Miller's at 16. So if you look down through those numbers, you got a lot of guys starting with the top. Noah Bendinger, you get those guys in the state tournament,
I
you'll
know
shoot you right out of the gym. You'll be heading home.
he did it last year. He came in, he checked in the I think it was a state championship game, and he must
Sure
have
can.
rattled off 11 straight points. Yeah. So he's totally capable of doing that. I'm excited to watch him at Boise State. And Lehigh's got between Ashton
Jewel and
Sewell
Hawkins.
and Hawkins. That's a dynamic. Like, again, I don't think when I go through these, I'm like, oh, there's somebody who's totally unbeatable. in the playoffs. And that's a testament, honestly, to like the state of Utah high school
Yeah.
basketball is really good. It just is. So anyway,
Let's go 5A.
so 5A, I didn't have a ton of changes, although I did move. So I had Orem at 1. I Timpview's going to have to beat Orem, and even then, it'd be like, do they have the full? I had Orem, by the way. I did an overall ranking, and I moved Orem up to 2 overall in the whole state,
I agree.
behind Wasatch Academy, and I dropped Utah Prep down to 3. And here's the reason why: because you can't fire your coach in the middle of the season, and then the first game out of the box. Listen, Montverde Academy is insanely good at basketball, right? They're gonna, but you come out in your first half, you get outscored 42-15 with
Not a good look.
arguably the
Not a good
best
look.
player. Listen, the best player in high school or college basketball right now. Like,
Yeah.
I literally, like, he would be the number 1 pick in the draft this year over Cooper Flagg, over Ace Bailey, over Dylan Harper. So I was like, all right, nobody cares at Utah Prep what I think about my rankings, but
They
I
probably
just
don't
want to
care
give a
that
shout
we're
out.
talking about them.
They don't care at all.
No.
But I did move Orem above them. Now, if Orem and Utah Prep played each other, number 1, be a really fun game. I'd probably guess that Utah Prep's going to win that because they're just so insanely talented. But so is Orem.
Okay.
So I got Orem 1. Timpview 2. I don't expect that's going to change a whole lot. Olympus 3. I don't expect that's going to change a whole lot. Olympus, I think you might have said it. They just win.
Just
They
win.
just
Win.
absolutely win games. I think I picked. I sometimes I take big swings just to see on like upsets. If I were to go through and like pick all the games, I think it'd be a lot better. But I'm like, what would be something that's kind of controversial? So I had Skyline beating Olympus because I watched Skyline give fits to Alta defensively with their guards, and they play pretty good defense, but you can't put up 30-something points and win in high school basketball. It's just not going to
Yeah,
happen.
I mean,
Highland.
here's my thought. I mean, Skyline, I had a hard time. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at through the lens that I have, which is I seen him in person, and I seen Woods Cross put a 40 piece on him, right? So I'm like, okay, how good are they? Obviously, they went on a little bit of a run, started winning some games, but then you go up against Olympus, and you get torched,
Yeah, they
right?
got
And
beat.
so, and obviously they have some good players. Obviously, I think is Lindquist, I think is one of them, and then obviously you got Cam, those guys. So I like their guys. I like Ite. I love the coach, great guy, but like where do they fall? Like are they literally a tier 1 team that we can talk about, or they just have a nice little runner there? I don't know.
Yeah.
But obviously, like you said, Olympus, 58-37. You look at Olympus, and it's like, obviously, we all know that Gavin Lowe is prime time. He's big time. He's been phenomenal all season. And then Caden Jackson's a great supplementary player alongside of him, and just catches and shoots and ends up with 15 to 18 points. You're like, okay, that works. You look at the rest of the guys, you're like, wait a minute, like, and next thing you know, they just win. They
Yeah.
just win. They just win. Olympus has got West this week, and then obviously I know there's a game that you're looking forward to on January 30th. It's at Olympus, so it's Highland versus Olympus.
And
So that
Olympus
one's going to be one that I'm
got
going to kind of
them.
circle and say, all right, where are we at, boys?
Yeah.
Where are we at Highland? Where are we at Olympus? We
And that's
kind of know where Olympus is. Highland's been really quiet, right? They've been winning, obviously, but that's a showdown on the 30th for sure.
absolutely, yeah. And I've got Highland at 4. I think that those two teams could flip flop if Highland comes out and puts the beat down on Olympus. And then again, 5 and 5A like was a little bit, so I know Bountiful. I think Woods Cross beat them this past week. And I put Juan Diego there, and it was really because I know that their region isn't great. I get it, right? But like, you got to go out and play the teams. There's rivalry games. People get up for them, and they're undefeated in region. Like and so I just thought there's got to be something to that, right? Like, and Juan Diego has some good wins this year. They really do. I really like Stockton Young. We've talked about them before. Dang Dang's playing really well. Luke Meyer is a big guy in the middle. They've got some guys that, I think similar to some of the teams we talked about in 6A, similar to like a Westlake, right? Like Juan Diego and Bountiful, and don't look now, but your boys up at Woods Cross are playing some really good basketball. They got to win without Hunter Jackson, and
Got to get him
I
healthy. Here's my
exactly. So
here's my thought on that. I mean, and I would have kept Bountiful at 5, and here's why. Because if you look at Woods Cross, and I've seen every game that they played, they've had I think at least an 8 point lead in every game that Hunter's played in this year, minus one game. And even at Olympus early, they were rolling against Olympus, and then obviously they collapsed in the second half. So I wouldn't, and then so the reason why I bring that up is because when you put them against Bountiful, you can throw out the
right.
records. I mean, last year Woods Cross was awful for most of the season. They go to Bountiful, and then they come at home, and it was like a 1 or 2 point game, right? The football player, the lefty, hit a 3 at the end to kind of to separate that one. So you kind of chalk that one up to, that was a good win. Woods Cross played really well. They had a great game plan for that game. It's a rivalry game. And then obviously Bountiful bounces right back and beats the breaks off of Box Elder, right? So
Yep.
I would have kept Bountiful at 5. And for that reason, one, I think Woods Cross is better than the record shows. I think they're more than capable. Madden Johnson's been playing lights out. But also, I look at Bountiful's team and I look at who they've played, right? They played Timpview, they've played Springville, they've played a lot of these good teams, and they have some guys that can play. I don't know what you get there with Juan Diego, just because the region, it's not the most. I mean, yeah, they're 6-0, but Cypress has
I
been
know.
up and down, right?
Yep.
Cypress has been kind of all over the place a little bit. They're winning, but they've been up and down. Kearns, Taylorsville, Hunter, Granger, West Jordan. You expect them to be that with those type of players, right? With Young and with Luke Meyer, you expect them to be undefeated. It's just where do they fall? Where do they fall in that hierarchy, right? Like, are they 5 or are they 6? I don't think you're wrong, right? I think they're right there, 5, 6, or
Yeah.
7. I think you're right on.
I mean, going through, to me, it was kind of a coin flip, honestly. You look at, like, on January 3rd, they lost at Harriman by 1 point. Juan Diego
See
did.
that? I didn't notice
I
that.
mean, they're 12-5. Like, I think it'd be a great game if Bountiful and Juan Diego play each other. I think it'd be a fantastic game, to be honest with you.
I think
So
Bountiful
you know,
beats Juan Diego right now. I think they do.
probably, but I've also learned that a lot of things can happen, right? Like, especially if a team gets on a roll in region, and if you start there's something to, like, winning games and, like, learning that we are a winning team, which is
I
why
agree.
teams don't always schedule as hard in the preseason, because you can get on that roll, and it can do a weird thing to your psyche. So much of basketball is mental. So I think that Juan Diego deserved at least a little there. I just wanted to let everyone know, like, they're in the conversation for it, whether or not they're
Fair
there
enough.
right now or they're not, right? Like, I consider them every week, and so it seemed like, okay, this is probably a week to throw them in there.
Yeah, I like it. I like
Um,
it. Real quick, let's see. I want to talk. I want to talk to somebody real quick. Let me see if we can bring him up here. And I'm going to surprise you with somebody real
I
quick.
can't
Let's see
wait.
if he comes on, because this is a team that I want to talk about. But if he doesn't come on, that's fine. We'll move on to your 4A list. But let's see if we can bring him in here.
Is it
I
is
just
it
sent the invite
Dad?
out. Huh?
Dad, is that you? Is it my father?
Let's see if he jumps on here. I don't know if he will or not. That's right. We'll give him about 5 seconds to accept it. If not, we'll move on to your 4A list. But obviously, 5A is very competitive. Just touching on Orem and Timpview real quick. You look at their box score from this week. Orem had, like, I think I posted like 8 guys in double. It felt like 8 guys in double figures. But also Timpview did the same thing.
Yeah.
A ton of balance, and those teams are really hard to prepare for. Obviously, and for any of these teams, like, you look at a lot of these teams, I'll just take for, like, Corner Canyon. If you can limit Noah, you're not going to stop them, and you can limit Brighton. The rest of the guys there, you're not game planning. I guess I'll say, the rest of the guys, right? Like, you're okay with what they're going to do. You look at Orem, you look at Timpview. You better be on alert on every player that's on the floor, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was going to bring in Bradley, but he's not on there. That's fine. I want to talk about Brighton a little bit because I really like what they're doing. But
Another,
anyway, so
by
I
the
was
way,
really impressed with those.
another part of the Juan Diego resume is a win over Brighton. A good win
They do.
over
Yep,
Brighton. So,
I agree. All right,
which
let's move on
they're
to
a very
your.
good team.
Let's move on to 4A.
I mean, I was excited to talk about Bradley Buckets because I
Me
got my
too.
Denver Nuggets hat on, and we got a kid who understands the assignment is going to go over to Denver, where where the champions are.
like
So
it.
4A didn't change a whole lot, with the exception of one team moving in. So Green Canyon stays at number one, Ridgeline at number two. I will tell what is happening up in Logan. Like they have hoopers up there, and I understand the I don't know, I don't want to say the grief, but like the people who, last year were like, why are you talking about our region? It's like, well, now we are. I mean, I got Green Canyon Ridgeline right up there at 1-2 and 4A. And I saw it firsthand. I mean, Judge went up there 3 times and played in Logan and are 0-3. So there's some good basketball going on up there. Also, Jalen Moore, shout out to Jalen Moore at Next Level Basketball. He runs a tremendous program up there in Logan. So they're doing some cool stuff.
Jalen Moore hit
so Green
a
Canyon won.
game-winning shot in the state playoffs. Big old throw. I think it was at Weber State. Never forget that. That was awesome back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah. We're not gonna. Then I got Cottonwood at 3. I put Timpanogos at 4. I dropped them after the Provo loss, and I moved Provo up to 5. And again, it was like Provo wasn't in the rank. Provo's had a bit of an up and down year, but somebody asked about Makai Allen. Is he been the most improved player potentially in the entire state? I mean, he's out there,
Good.
getting 40 pieces. I mean, it is so hard to do that with a level of efficiency. And so I think that Provo, listen, I know that if you say, like we were talking about with Corner Canyon, like, hey, if you can take away, or if you can limit these guys, if you can limit Makai Allen, that is easy to say. It's easy to say, can you limit Noah? Can you limit Brighton? But you have to actually go out and do it. And teams have struggled to do that. So
What is your
so
take on,
those are my.
Cottonwood?
Oh
Cottonwood sitting there
man.
undefeated. Like, are they a legit 4A contender? Like, tell me what your thoughts are there. Obviously, John Roseveare, scoring 19 points a game.
Yep.
A good player, good shooter.
I
Can
really
score.
like Tengus.
He's
He's a
nice.
2026 guard. He's super smooth with the ball. This is a funny story. We were playing him when I was coaching, and he was in like 7th grade. And one of their kids, they only had 5 players, and one of their kids got hurt and couldn't play. Like, it was a nasty injury. And so I was like, we're just going to keep playing man. Like, I'm not going to like double them because it's like 7th grade basketball. I didn't want to, and Tengus, we torched us. Just that 4-on-5, that kid killed us. So it's been fun to kind of watch him play. I mean, I don't really know who at this point. I suspect that Murray, if I had to guess, like, who's going to give Green Canyon a run in 4A, I think Ridgeline has already showed they can. They beat them. And I think that Timpanogos absolutely could. I think that Provo could. But I think that I would put Murray right in line, maybe by Ridgeline, with where they're at today, right?
I
Like,
agree.
once Isaiah Bay came back, absolutely changed the trajectory of that team. So, but it was hard. I mean, again, it's like they're kind of right there lingering at like in that like 6, along with Payson. Payson put up a good fight against LCA.
Yeah.
Those guys, they don't have a lot of guys that we're talking about, but they've got a great team. They move the ball. They play really well. So,
There's a guy on Cottonwood, going back to them real quick. Luca, I don't even know how to say his last name. He's 6'8", he's 2027. We need to get Hector on the phone and talk to him about the rankings, because this kid can ball. I don't know if you've seen him or not. Big lanky 6'8". Luca says that. I don't know how you say his last name. But I remember watching him at the Olympus tournament that they played. I was like, who is that kid? Where did he come from? He had 28 the other night against Jordan. So that's huge if he can come in at his size, provide, some rebounding, get some scoring around the basket. I think he can step out and shoot a little bit too.
Yeah.
Not a ton out to the three-point line, but he does have a little bit of range. But, I mean, that's another guy too. You throw him alongside Roseveare and Park. I mean, you can kind of see why Cottonwood has been playing the way they've been playing.
Park is the other kid. I think he's leading the state in assists, right? Like he's
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I still think it's Green Canyon's. They're likely to be one, but again, they've shown they can be beat, and so.
What about the region down south? I mean, you look at Region 9, you got Crimson Cliffs 12.
Crimson Cliffs, right.
And what
Dixie,
a wild
though.
game that was with them and Dixie.
Oh, can we talk about this, though? Because I did comment on your So here's what bothered me about that is when, like, I obviously didn't watch the whole game, but when you put up the video, the clock runs,
Yep.
right? So the ball goes through the hoop with like zero point 0.6 seconds left. There is no chance on earth that a coach called a timeout and that the ref reacted fast enough to grant the timeout from the time the ball goes through the hoop till it hits the ground. So
Yeah,
I
I thought there was
thought,
about 1.6 when it went through. Maybe I thought there was a little bit of time there. I agree with you. It's impossible.
yeah,
But I mean, you are talking about a really veteran coaching staff there too, on the Dixie
no,
sideline.
I totally get it. But I was like, I don't know that I would have given him the timeout because
And a little
you,
home
you,
cooking, right? I mean, it's not a bad thing.
yeah. And the play by Forsey was super smart. Did he
Brilliant.
sell it? 100% he sold it. And let me tell you something, I used to do that all the time when I played basketball. I'm 5'10". When we were in the bonus, I shot like 90% from the free throw line. I'd go find the biggest dude, set a screen, and then just fall over and go get two free throws, especially when I hadn't scored. I was like, I gotta go get a bucket here.
That's
So I totally
funny.
get it. I was not mad about the play, right? Like you got to have your head on a swivel if you're guarding that guy, but I did think I did think that they got a little bit robbed there, Crimson Cliffs. But that region is kind of it's like they all just kind of sort of keep, then Hurricane. I don't think they got any transfers from Utah Prep, so I'm guessing that it's their team, and they go and they beat Dixie,
Yep.
so it's hard to
Yep.
know. I'm just not. I'll call up my friend Coach Ball, and we'll talk about how great Russell Westbrook's been for the Nuggets and how CSU beat Boise State, and if he can give me the lowdown on the region down
I
there.
guess
So
the Desert Hills staff just chimed in and said that was an inadvertent whistle that stopped play in the Dixie game. Inadvertent whistle.
okay,
So it wasn't a timeout that was called. It was an
yo,
inadvertent whistle, which is
that
wild.
is shady stuff right there. Come on, an inadvertent whistle. That's
Hey
crazy.
man,
If that's
there's
the
been some
case, let me
interesting
let me
ref
tell you let
stuff
me tell
going
you
on
this.
this
Let me tell
year.
you this. Let me tell you this. If that's the case, no chance you can call that. You can call that and give him two free throws. If you stop the game and it was supposed to be over, you can't. That would be a tough one to call. Anyway, I would love to get into the official thing,
Point
but
6. Why are you guarding the inbounds at point 6 anyway? Like I don't understand that.
uh,
Point 6.
yeah, I don't know. Make it tough
Yeah.
for him to throw it in. I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't be
okay.
surprised though, real quick to wrap up Region 9. Don't be surprised if one of those teams, I'm talking Crimson, I'm talking Pineview, I'm talking Dixie, maybe even a Desert Hills. One of those teams is going to jump up and bite somebody that we're talking about.
Yep.
Watch. I think it'll happen. One of those teams is
Similar.
going to jump up and bite somebody. It might be a Desert Hill squad that has a lot of guys that can go. It could be Dixie, obviously Forsey, and those guys are playing some good basketball. They've obviously been in big moments before. But one of those teams is going to jump up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of those squads, Desert Hills, Dixie, Pineview, or Crimson, spoils the party and makes that Final Four. Don't
Yeah.
think they'll win it all, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're in that Final Four.
Yeah. Similar to Logan. The down in southern Utah, right? Great, tremendous youth programs. They teach the game really well. They play a really, really great brand of basketball. Are we going to do 3A as
Yeah,
well?
let's do 3A, and then I want to circle back to 4A, and let's get into this whole coaching thing
Yeah,
that I talked about today. I want to get
I'm
your
I'm
opinion on
excited.
some of that stuff.
So 3A, I didn't. I mean, honestly, there's not a ton to talk about other than
No,
I told Sanyon that I dropped Judge Memorial down to 5 because they only won by 80, and if they would have won by 100, I would have kept them at 4.
it's a
Um,
rough week for Providence Hall, man. It's a
that
rough
was
week for those
tough.
boys.
That was tough. And I mean, I was obviously at the game, and I'll tell you, like, Judge didn't play two starters. One starter was out. Then they sat Longar for the second half of the game. They pulled all the starters for the entire fourth quarter. So there's a bunch of kids who don't play a lot who are in there, and it's like, what do you expect them to do? Not try to go score? Like, of course they're going to do that, right? But
That's tough.
yeah, and it did make me. I mean, the Providence Hall, somebody was upset with Judge for scoring the 100th point, and then I looked over and they beat like Utah Military Academy like 96-40 or something. I'm like,
I
come
remember
on,
that.
guys.
And then American
Um,
Heritage dropped a buck 20 on him, I think, a couple days
100,
later.
108.
Was it?
Um, yeah,
Jeez. All right,
yeah,
3A, let's go.
yeah. So Morgan is the runaway right now. Nobody's really even close to Morgan. They're playing great basketball. Um, I don't know what to make of Richfield, but they just keep winning basketball
Yeah.
games. I mean, honestly, and American Heritage, similar to Judge, right? They've scheduled some really tough
Yeah.
non-conference or preseason games. So, but I've got them at 3, and then I put South Summit at 4 and Judge at 5. I mean, in reality, to me, this is this is no shade to Richfield. I'm not sitting there like watching film on Richfield. So maybe they're incredible. I legitimately don't know. I have them at number 2 in my power rankings, but I think it's Morgan, American Heritage, Judge, and then South Summit has maybe the 3A player of the year right now in Logan Wolstenhume. So I think he might be leading the state in scoring and rebounding. And
Yeah, he's the
so
beast.
he's an absolute beast. So it's like I suspect it's those 4 teams that are going to be there in the if it all aligns correctly, right,
Mm-hmm.
to be there in the final 4. But because of the RPI, I don't think Judge or maybe even American Heritage, they're probably not in the top 5 right now in RPI.
Yeah. Throw that
And
out there.
so, yeah. But anyway, those are my
February 7th,
more.
American Heritage and Judge play each other for the second time. American Heritage, I believe, beat them by 15 the first time around. Yep. And then,
Yeah, can I just give a little bit of clarity on that
dude,
game because it was interesting. So it was a pretty close game for most of the game. Monowintana was excellent. Peary was excellent for American Heritage, but Judge with about a minute and a half pulled everybody and put in the JV players when they were down 9. Maybe it was like a minute. They were down 9, and or maybe it was 8 or 9. Anyway, and American Heritage lets their starters in, which is
yeah,
fine, right? It's their
yeah,
prerogative. And they rattled off like 6 or 8 straight points, which is the score is what the score is. But I'm like, the game was actually a
in
lot
context.
closer than a 15-point loss, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that 15-point loss can be like, oh, they were down 25, they made a run to close it to 15. It was not that at all. I expect it to be a really good game down at American Heritage.
That'll be fun. Well, and the thing is, you look at from Morgan's standpoint. I mean, I agree with you. Wilson Human's having a huge year, right? But Morgan went in there, took care of business, no problem. I think Bracken Saunders is your current 3A player of the year, obviously because they're
Agreed.
17-1, and he's phenomenal. He's a great player. I think he's the most underrated player in the state of Utah.
Yep.
Wilson Hume's obviously great, but you look at the guys around him, you're like, okay. You look at the guys around Saunders. You got Colton Ace, who's probably one of the top 5 shooters in the state,
Yep.
all-time Morgan 3-point shooting record. The Hanson kid at the point is actually really good. He's got a really nice mid-range game. And then you got 2 guys down low that are just workhorses, right? You got the Pace kid and the other big kid. They call him Swish or Swish. I don't know what they call him. Anyway, those 5 guys are actually pretty dang good. So I agree with you that I think Morgan is probably the favorite in that 3A, but I don't think they want to see American Heritage or Judge at
No.
any point during that tournament. They would love for those guys to just slip up and go early, which could happen. But I mean, I think either one of those teams in a neutral floor, American Heritage played at Morgan, but toss that out the window. I don't think anybody wins at Morgan, right? It's probably one of the toughest places to go.
I mean, last year, Judge in the first round of the playoffs went to Morgan and won, right? And
Mason Williams, that's the guy. I don't know what they have a nickname. They have a nickname for all their kids up there in Morgan. I don't know. Somebody just said Mason Williams. He's the other big guy that I think he's just a beast, solid guy, a rim runner, block shots. Him and Nate Pace. I love Nate. Nate played for me back in the old comp days. I love him. He's just a scrapper. So they have a lot of good pieces and parts. And then you throw in Saunders, who's very versatile, 3-level scorer, can do a lot of things, and then AC can shoot the 3. Morgan's good, man. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they win it all. I wouldn't want to play Judge or American Heritage just because you got guys, Winnetana, you got JJ Pathgang, who are better than anybody that I think Morgan has on the roster, right? And that obviously separates a little bit.
Yeah,
Splash
yeah. I mean,
his nickname.
at the end of the day, right? Like you got to if you want to win the championship, you got to beat the champion, right? And so
100%.
Currently Judge is the returning state champion, and they have the returning 3A player of the year, who is playing. He's playing a lot better. So I would be scared of Judge because they're starting to put it together. And if it's the same thing that happened last year. Now they have Wasatch Academy, the national team, on February 4th, which will be I'm hoping it will be a really fun and challenging game getting ready for the playoff run. So, as much as I love Bracken Saunders, he's not an Isaiah Harwell, right? Like, as much as I love Colton Macy, he's not Junior County.
It's
So,
100% accurate.
I mean that's what they're going to be coming in
Yeah,
with that game. So anyway,
I
but
like it.
do we need what are we going to do about 1A hoops? Because I'm stoked to talk about the Penguich Bobcats and Valley and the Rich Rebels. Are we going to break this down, or what are
No,
we doing with that?
no, we're not.
Dang it!
We're
Did
not
did
yet.
you see?
Not yet.
Did you get a hold of Jace Cox for Hoops
I did.
Diaries?
And he said, I'll think about it. He gave me the he gave me the think about it. So
Man,
yeah, we need to see it. I seen he's got like a big monster truck, and I want to see the dunks and all this. Like, I think it'd be perfect, right? Like, what are we doing?
dude, yeah, it's
I picked up
crazy. Anyway, all right,
a
we don't have
couple of Milford followers today, so let me get one of those Milford guys. I don't know where Milford, Panguitch. I know where Wayne is. I don't know where Valley is. I don't know where so any of these guys, Escalante, yeah. If you're from any of those cities and you want to do a hoop strider, if you don't know what they are, go check it out on our page, on my page. I would love to see it. I'd love to see you take me through a day in Panguitch and see what that's like. If you're in
right.
Cokeville, I want to see you take me to the Flying J and show me the different food options that are available there, and you can get gas and take a shower and all this. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do at those types of places, no small towns, right?
Yeah.
So no, we're not
All
talking Wayne hoops.
right.
All right, let's bring it back in. Let's bring it back in. And again, if you have any comments, you want to ask any questions, throw them in the comments right now. We'll try and look at them as much as we can. By the way, I just want to shout out Simon Sue. I think he was on here just a little bit. I don't know if he's still on here, but looks like he picked up an offer to NWAC up to, I don't even know how to say it, Mpekwa. I don't know how you say that, but congratulations to him. I love Simon. I think he's a good young man. I love to see people like that getting opportunities to play at the next level.
Yep.
So I did see that earlier, so congratulations to him. Let's talk about this. So I had a couple of things. One of the questions that somebody asked me was, somebody made a comment the other day, said Skyridge needs to fire all their coaches, right? Skyridge, I think, is 10-7 on the season, right?
Right.
They're in a very tough region, and it just got me thinking. I was like, okay, so I made a couple of comments, and then last night before I went to bed, I get online and I see a comment saying Bear River needs to fire all their coaches, and I'm thinking, all right, like, what are we doing?
Right.
Like, parents, what are we doing? So we had a huge conversation today. It lasted all day. I posted a lot about it, but I also didn't post a lot about it. It's funny because I did go back. I actually did do this. I went back and I watched Green Canyon versus Bear River from earlier this week. Guess what I saw? I saw a bunch of kids for Bear River. Obviously, Green River was playing the full court, or not full court. They were
Green
playing
Canyon.
Green Canyon. Yeah, Green Canyon's playing it looked like a 3-2 zone or a 1-2-2 or 1-2-2. Anyways, they were playing a zone, obviously forcing them to the corners. And guess what they did? They shot like 53s in the first half. They shot 1 or 2 shots maybe within 3 feet of the basket. And then on obviously the flip side is if you give up, if you're shooting long shots, what's going to happen? Long rebounds, they run, right? And so from my perspective, I'm like, is that really the coach's fault? Like, obviously, like, isn't upon the players to, like, I think driving against the zone is the easiest thing you can do because you throw a ball fake this way, everybody moves, and you just take off, right? Like what are we doing strategically? From a player standpoint, not necessarily from the coaches, because they just, they send them out there and say, I'm sure the message wasn't, hey, go shoot 53s or, a couple logo shots. I mean, if you're not there. So again, I get really frustrated when people call for coaches' heads. I guess that's my rant summarized, right?
Yeah.
Because, let's be honest, it's high school basketball. Like,
I
it's high
know.
school basketball. None of this, in the grand scheme of things, none of it matters, right? So talk to me about your thoughts. Tell me what your thoughts are.
I mean,
Obviously,
I really,
you're a dad as well, right? Go
yeah,
ahead.
I agree with Tim Drisdom in the comments. We should just fire all coaches and hire volunteer dads um, to coach the team. Uh, it's a great strategy. I was in that position, oddly enough. I had to step up and be a volunteer varsity basketball coach for my son's first year of high school basketball. And so I do have a bit of a perspective on that, which is this, like, there, I don't know, outside of maybe, yeah, I mean, there's like prep schools and some other schools where it's like the coach's full-time job is to coach basketball, right? Most of the time they are coaching from a position of exhaustion, meaning they've worked all day. They've had their, their spouses. They've got kids. They're just dealing with stuff, and then they go into a gym and they're trying to put together a game plan. And I don't know about you, but when I coached, I didn't sleep well because we would lose a game, and I was thinking about the 2-3 zone. I was thinking about, okay, how are we going to break that press next time? I was dreaming about inbounds plays. Like I
Oh
just
yeah.
could not. It's your mind is going a
Oh
million
yeah.
miles an hour. So you are literally working like 10 to 12 hours a day is what it feels like. You're at least thinking about it. And then you're getting a stipend. I didn't get a stipend. I told them I wanted to volunteer and they could give the stipend to someone else in the school. So, but you get a small stipend that most coaches, by the way, end up spending on their team
Let me
anyways.
stop you because
Um,
I had somebody today commented and said I got a like a $4,000 stipend and I used it to buy basketballs because we didn't have the
right,
newest
because
ones.
it's not in the budget. Or
It's not in the
I mean,
budget. What
I
are you
mean, listen,
doing?
there are schools where, the kids can't, like, it's hard for them to afford like meals, like 3 meals a day. There are schools in the Salt across the state where that's difficult. And oftentimes it's the basketball team and the basketball coach who will step up and do this. So listen, you can disagree and it's okay and natural. Like I take like Sanyan will tell you a judge, like there are times where I've disagreed, but I don't blast it to my son. Like I'm like, listen, if you go talk to your coach, because what does that teach him? Like it's high school basketball, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything. But what it can mean is, like I said, I put in the comments that I still talk to my coach from 1999. I still do, right? Like you can build a network. You can have somebody to talk to. You can have somebody to help kind of mentor you, especially if you're going to go play in college. But you can also learn how to communicate with adults. You can understand how to be, a grown up. And if you have a problem with somebody, you go talk to that person. You don't go complain and whine to your parents and then hope that mommy and daddy are going to come and they're going to go fight your fight for you. And then mom and dad are going to go do that and you're just going to teach this bad pattern. It's like, no, stop it. Just absolutely cut it off and stop doing it, right? If you as a parent, and AJ, I know you feel this as well, like I have watched a lot of basketball. I have coached a lot of basketball. I've been around college teams as a chaplain. I've coached high school. I've played in high school. I walked on in college. Like I've been around a lot of coaches. And when I'm at a game, the reason you don't see me posting a lot of clips at Judge is because I intentionally just want to go be a dad. I'm like, I'm not going to be a dad for very long in this second. Like, stop trying to be the coach. Stop trying to be the referee. And we can talk about that in a second. Stop trying to be the ref. Stop trying to be the coach. Stop trying to be just be a
Yeah.
dad or just
Yeah.
be a mom and
It's
just
so
enjoy
hard for so many
the
people.
moments.
It's
I
so
know.
hard.
I know because we're all competitive, right? But the minute that I thought like I'm not going to be a content creator, I'm not going to be a podcast host, I'm not going to be a coach. I want to be a dad in these moments. And for me, figuring out how to do that helped me so much, right? Because now I'm not fully I just get to be a dad. I get to hug my son after he's had a good game. I get to hug him after he's had a bad game, right? Like we get to have those car rides home. And for me, that's a time that I'm not going to get back. And if you blow it and all you're doing is just whining and complaining about your coach, you're missing out on the beauty of basketball. So that's my little rant that I didn't put out there. Because it was it was Sabbath. I don't know why you're posting on the Sabbath, but I'm
Well,
just kidding.
so here's my situation. Like I said, in my profession, right? I'm a trainer. I'm a finance trainer, and everything that I teach is based off of typically mistakes that I've made, right? And so same thing here. When my daughter came through, right? She played all 4 years of varsity basketball. I was hard on the coach. I was hard on the players. The car rides home with my daughter were a lot of times like you look back at them, you're like, oh my gosh, like who was that person? Even in a win, it would turn into, my daughter's crying tears because, I'm saying this or that, or you didn't shoot it. Like it was rough. And it was a huge set of mistakes that I made that I haven't have one of the youngest coaches in the state. You know, he's been there. This is his 4th year. And so you have a lot of A-type personalities. I think I'm an A-type personality. And it can be very intimidating, right? Like it can be hard on these coaches, especially if your kid is one of the better players, right? You know, you can just, and I'm sure as a coach, you can feel it. You can, like, they're aware, right? They can feel it. Here's the thing is like, you know, and it has, I mean, obviously it's a lot from my wife saying, hey, like none of this stuff matters, right? And so it's allowed me to
Right.
kind of step back and have a little perspective. But, you know, and I posted this today, watch your child when they win a game. Do they care about how many points they scored, how many assists they had, how many rebounds, or how many shot attempts? If they don't care, why do you? Right? Like, why are you making it a deal? Or, you know, well, you should have done this, or you need to get to this. Like, none of that stuff matters. My son scored 3 points the other night on 1 of 7 shooting against Bountiful, right? He had I think 8 or 9 assists and 7 or 8 rebounds, and they won. And you know what? You'd have thought he had 50. And so it's those situations like if they're happy and just enjoying the experience and like sit back and enjoy the ride. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But there's so many parents, and I think a lot of it, I'm going to call it like there's a lot of it in these smaller towns that are trying to live their life through their child. They're trying to run their race again, even though their race was over 20 to 25 years ago. Right. As somebody that's, I mean, I played in college as you do. I've been coaching, I've been training. So like, I get it. Like, do I feel like I know more than maybe our coach does? Maybe. Right. But who cares? Right. I'm
Yeah.
not the coach. The
You're not
administrator,
coaching.
the administrator put that person in charge to run that particular program. My son wants to play there. He is playing there. I got to step back. Right.
Yep.
And before, you know, he was a junior, and then obviously I did this year. It was right before tryouts. I said, hey man, best of luck. Let's go get it this year. You have my support 100%. My son's
Yeah.
been the best player in that team, you know, arguably for the last 2 years, right? So how much does that mean to that coach, right? He can go out there and know that he can hold that person accountable, because if you can't hold that person accountable, how are you going to hold everybody else accountable, right? And the conversations, you know, at the dinner table, the car ride, like I try not to talk about the game unless he wants to until the next day or the day after, right? Like you just got to let it go, because to your point, there's so much damage you can do. Like you can destroy a team. If he was to come home and say, dude, look, you gotta put up 20 a game. Like, what are we doing here, right? Like you gotta start shooting. Hey, we won. You know, no, it doesn't matter. So I said this earlier. It's a parent that can make a loss or a win feel like a loss, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
Right? That's a shame.
And I'll add to that, because we're talking about high school. You have a senior, I have a junior in high school. I see this in the 5th grade, sixth
Oh yeah.
grade, you know, even like junior jazz levels. It's like, I mean, what is happening with the state of parenting where we feel like we have to be at these levels? It's like, do they love the game? Because if they don't love it in 4th and 5th grade, if they're not having fun, they're toast, because it is a absolute grind
Yeah.
to get to a varsity basketball team. Like it's not a guarantee, much less if you want to go play after that. So if they don't love the game, you want to instill that they should have joy. Are they getting better? Are they learning the basic fundamentals of the game? And I'm talking about through probably 6th and 7th grade. And there are people losing their minds at some of these games. And we collectively, I've probably done it myself, we collectively have to learn what it means to not only do this with the parents, but I mentioned that I wanted to talk about the officials, because I think we have to have the same grace for the officials. Because listen,
That's hard, man.
I know, but just hear me out. The reason I say it is because there's a lot of these officials who, I mean, I just had dinner with my friend Brad, who's been on here, right? Like he works 40 hours a week. Then he got in his car on Saturday and he drove 6 hours to go officiate a game, and then 6 hours to come back and have dinner with his family. Like some of these officials they're doing the best they can. And I would say, like, if you think that officiating is bad in the state of Utah, I'm not talking to you specifically, AJ. I'm talking you in general. This isn't a direct attack. I would suggest trying to become an official, legitimately, because they need
They
officials
do
in the
need them.
state. And if you're the one sitting if you're sitting there yelling over the back, if you're sitting there yelling 3 seconds, first of all, over the back is not a
Or the
penalty in basketball.
foul
It's not a
count.
foul
Or the foul
or the
count.
foul
They've
count.
got 6. We've got 1.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well,
They
that doesn't
fouled him,
matter. They
man.
fouled him 6 times. I don't know. Now listen, are there poorly officiated games?
Yes.
100%. But guess what else? There are poorly coached games. There are poorly played games. There are poorly officiated games. And if we can all just collectively take a deep breath and say, okay, that was a poorly officiated game, and that's just going to happen, right? It's going to happen to you in life. It's just it's you're going to have this stuff go on. So I've really tried hard. Like I try to thank the officials after every game because I know a lot of them are. It's tough. It's tough to go through your. It's tough to go into a gym and have half the fans hate you. And by the way, if you're somebody who complains about the officials, I want to hear just one time. I've never heard this. Just one time a team go, we were so much worse than the other team, but the officials bailed us out. They were awful, but we benefited from all the calls. They gave us way too many free throws, and I couldn't believe it. We won the game because of the officials. I've never heard somebody say that ever in my life. It's always, we lost the game because of the officials. And listen, I get it. There's bad officiating, but like, follow your shot is another. Oh my gosh, parents screaming that, follow your shot. That's not always the best idea. Sometimes the coaches told them to get back. Um, sometimes it's, yeah. So anyway, just my overall thing would be just enjoy the ride a little bit. You're not going to go play. You're not, if you want to go play, go join a men's or women's rec league, like just a co-ed rec league, like go play, go have fun. See if Tim will put you on his powder league team.
Nice.
Like just go, but just do your best to enjoy it. That's the only thing I would ask. And I feel like it's probably going to fall on deaf ears, but if I can just throw one starfish into the ocean and be like, oh yeah, I helped that one. That's my.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's hard, right? Like there's kind of two subjects at hand right here. One, obviously, going back to the parent thing, I would invite all parents to have your coaches back. Refrain from talking about, and I said this earlier today, keep your circles tight, right? You can have an opinion. I have an opinion, right? Like, did I like the fact that whatever, right? Have your circles tight. So if you're going to talk about it, talk to your spouse, right? Maybe
Yeah,
call somebody that doesn't live in the state, talk to them about it, right? You can air all your
absolutely.
grievances. But if you're sitting there driving a wedge, which that's a problem, right? That's a big problem. And it doesn't help anybody, to your point. Secondly, I agree. We got to give the officials some grace. I do agree with that. Here's my problem with the officiating this year, right? And I think it's been 3 times that I've seen this. Normally I'm fine. Like if I don't hear from you, I don't notice you, right? That's great. Okay. Here's what I don't I know, right? Here's here's what I have a problem with. I have a problem, and there's certain individuals, and I've seen it over years because I can point them out, right? There's certain individuals that have big egos, and there's no reason that one person, regardless of where they're at on the floor, right? Because they're supposed to be rotating around, is responsible for 90% of the calls. And the other two guys are sitting there looking like, we don't know what's going on. Like, we don't know why he's doing that, right? Drake, I saw that name. I'm not going to name names, but Tim did for me. Here's the thing. There was a game, Woods Cross versus Northridge a couple weeks ago, right? Obviously, I go to all the Woods Cross games. The other coach from Northridge and the fans were as dumbfounded as we were. There was 53 calls made in a game, high school
Yeah,
game. 53 calls. I've never seen that in my life. Nobody
right.
can play like that. Nobody comes to see that. Like, and so at what point do you like get with your crew and say, like, let's try and fix this, like let's adjust this so that we're not the story of the game, right? Like
So
that's
so
what
they
that that's what's
they
frustrating
do,
to me. Don't be the story. Let the kids play. They work so hard. They're talented. They're physical. They're fast. They put in the time. Let them play, right? If it's
right.
egregious, yes. but you can't sit there and it looks like you're keeping a team in the game because every time they roll over the basket, they're getting and ones or touch fouls. Like, it's just wild. In that game, we had 3 starters foul out. I've never seen that before. 53 calls. And I know that the guys on the Northridge side were like, we don't want to be in this game either. This sucks.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
my rant.
so that's fine. You're allowed. This is a tight circle of 30 people
Hey,
live. But so I think it's important to know that the officials come together, they review the games, they have film, they have a hierarchy of people, they have to go report to those people, they have to go through training, so the way that I always think about it is like officials are going to have they're going to have bad games, right? Just like Utah Prep is going to have a totally bad half against Mount Verde and be down by 30 at half, right? Like they had a bad half. Officials are going to have bad games, and I don't know why, right? Like I don't know why one person starts doing it, but I can tell you that the people who are responsible for the officials, at least in Salt Lake, are trying their hardest to make
sure.
sure that everything is enforced, that people are trained. But at the end of the day, because, by the way, of how parents treat officials and
That was my
berate them
question.
at games, there are fewer and fewer officials who want to ref high school basketball games. And so unless we want to start paying them a lot more money than we already pay them, if your team is constantly harassing and berating officials at the home games, you're probably not going to have a bunch of people who are stoked to be there because the officials all talk. It's like, oh yeah, well, if you got to go ref at that place, they're brutal on you. They are
Do
absolutely
you think that?
brutal.
Let me ask you a question. Like, obviously, you can point the guys out that we feel like maybe have ego. Do you feel like when they get in those moments, it snowballs based on the reactions of the crowd
Totally could.
that they're getting?
Yeah, they're people, right? I mean, they're human beings. And so when you hear these fans and the things that people say to these officials is
It's bad.
terrible. It's so bad. And it's not just like, hey, that was a bad call. Like, okay, fine. But it's like, I mean, it's stuff about their hair and their looks and it's just like constant. And it's like, what do you think's gonna happen? Do you think that official is gonna be like, you know what, they're right.
Let me
I'm
even this
bald.
out.
Let me even this thing out. Or yeah, no, that's not gonna happen, right? So the more your fans are berating and harassing officials and coaches, the more you do it, just understand that is not helping you. And I'm not an official, but I'm telling you right now, that is not helping your
Sure.
team, not helping you guys at all. So, yes, that sucks. I watched a JV game, which is the same thing. I think there was like 60 in a JV game, which delayed the start of the varsity game. There was like 60 fouls called in this JV game, and it was every time down the court. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they're all just trying to get better. They're trying to develop, right? Like this is not help. But again, it's JV officials at a 3A level, and you're not getting these aren't professional NBA officials. They're probably going to miss 50 to 60% of the calls. In the pros, they miss 30 to 40% of the calls, and they're judged on a very high
Yeah.
level. So when you know it, if you know better, then you can do better. The more you
So I
know.
guess the bottom line is to wrap up that topic is parents. Let's just sit in the stands and enjoy the game, and let's just sit there and swallow our tongue when it comes to officiating. Right? It'd be a much more better experience, I guess you could say. Right?
Rage text your best friend about it if you really want to, right? Like you get it out there, but yelling at the refs it's not. I was at the UNLV San Diego State game sitting basically courtside, and there were some people yelling at the officials, and the officials did not react well to that, and I think it actually cost San Diego State a game against UNLV. I really do, because it was horrible what grown adults were saying to other people. And you're
Crazy.
setting a bad example for the kids on the court. So anyway, that's my
That's crazy.
do right,
Let's see. As we
do
wrap this
right.
up,
Yes, Tim Tristam.
do we have any questions? Anybody out and ask a question? We can throw Adam on the spot real quick. So give him a few seconds. Do we have any
Give
questions? We
me on
have
the spot. Any fun games we got coming up this week while questions are coming in? Provo at Payson.
that's gonna be a good
Um,
one.
um, Dixie at Crimson Cliff. Cottonwood at Murray. This is Tuesday.
Cottonwood Murray is gonna be a
Um,
good one.
yep. Uh, uh,
Bountiful
let's,
at Viewmont on Tuesday or Wednesday is gonna be a good one. That'll be a good one.
if you go through Deseret News, Judge does not play Wasatch Academy on January 28th. That's fake news. Um,
Somebody says that ICS got their first home win since the AJ days. Happy locker room. Love that, right?
yeah, and by the way, the last home win before that was the forfeit. It was actually my last game coaching. It was a forfeit from Telos because a little bit of a skerfuffle broke out and their bench cleared.